Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for taking time off to join us today. This is Kodialbail. I'm a storage engineer with NetApp IT. Been with NetApp in many different roles. Started off with customer support many years ago, and then moved to IT. Right now, I'm in the storage engineering team, which is responsible for all the storage products that go into our corporate data center, right? So, because we are NetApp, every storage product is NetApp. And I reached out to Eduardo, who's on the call today, and I'm sure some of you have attended the session a while ago. I think maybe a couple of weeks ago. Okay, so as storage engineers here at NetApp, we are also part of what you may be familiar with the term as Customer-1. That our charter as being Customer-1 is to provide, use our own internal products and provide early feedback on all of our products, and as well as serve as a reference for our customers. Okay, Customer-1 meaning we try to be the first customer to deploy any new product that comes that's released, and at times we have to deal with products that don't even have documentation, right? So it's a lot of fun, challenging, and we are hoping it'll benefit our customers, because we will figure out there are issues that and engineering can fix earlier on. Okay, because we are corporate IT, we are like any traditional enterprise. We have over 450 storage controllers deployed with about, I think, 75 petabytes of storage. And so with that, let me start with, of course, I think most of you guys are familiar with E-Series already, but for the sake of completeness, I'll just bear with me as I maybe talk about E-Series for maybe 2 slides, okay? So what is E-Series? This is our simple SAN storage, which is block only, as compared to ONTAP. This does not have a file system, and we let the applications to handle all of that, the file system part and all that. So it's high performance and low latency, we have a whole lot of features there, very basic. So our target is to keep it fast, simple, and reliable, as you see on the slide here. There's a lot of simple connectivity, and as I mentioned earlier, the file system part is to be managed by the application. Okay, we can have a choice of doing RAID 0, 1, 10, 5, 6, or dynamic disk pools, there's an option of having multiple host interfaces, a choice of interfaces. It could be either a fiber channel, iSCSI, InfiniBand, or SAS, right? And there's some basic functionality. It's not at the level of ONTAP as far as storage management features are concerned. There's volume copy and snapshots also, but again, not at the level of ONTAP. And there's synchronous and asynchronous mirroring too. Okay. And moving on, we also have over 1 million units shipped so far. That's a pretty decent number there, right? And so we have, I think this is my second slide on the E-Series. We have, right now, we have our entry-level 2000 series and the mid-range, which is the 5700 series. We have the option of doing nearline SAS or SSDs also. Okay, so there's the E series. If E2800 or E5700 with regular HDDs or with all SSDs, which is the EF series, and you could also have the hybrid option, right? Some SSDs and the remaining are all HDDs. Okay, anywhere from 24 to 60 drives, additional shelves, and you can have multiple shelves attached to the controller. Okay, right. And then the actual solution areas. This is, as I mentioned, it's for meant to be simple storage direct attach. So naturally it fits nicely into anything that requires storage for backup and recovery, video surveillance, video production, high performance computing, analytics, right? And we have a whole lot of solutions partnered with the vendors listed below. Okay, so notice all the verticals there about industry or the target industries, right? For backup recovery, video surveillance, high performance computing, and analytics. So I will connect that with what we are actually using it for. Okay, now we're done with the marketing detail there and moving on to what we are using. Okay, so when we first started deploying E-Series, it was for our Hadoop clusters. And that was when we had the 2600, which is now end of life. And we then, so our Hadoop clusters are all used for ASUP data, right? And then we we have E-Series being used with our Splunk ecosystem. And a whole lot of controllers are being deployed across our offices for video surveillance. Okay, and also you guys are familiar with the data visionary center, and all the media production for that is being done on our E-Series. Okay, and then of course the storage grid, which is growing at a very fast pace in corporate NetApp IT. Right, I think we are a little over 60 nodes now, and the physical appliance is actually a E-Series array. Right, so in all we are at 180 clusters. Sorry, 180 storage arrays. And our team is responsible for managing it. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, moving on.
Ram,
Yeah.
just a question from me.
Yeah.
Like you have 180 storage arrays. So how many people are managing for these, more or less? Do you know?
That's a good question. Yes. So I was just gonna mention that here with our challenge. So thank you for bringing that up. So our team, managed by Eduardo, is six plus Eduardo, right? And we are responsible for the design and the setting up the standards and what actually goes into the data centers. But then we have and we are the level for escalation team. And there's an actual support operations team for responsible for 24/7 support, right? So that's about, I think we have about 15 or 20 people. So there's two groups, one sitting in our Bangalore office, and another set of people sitting in RTP, right? And there are a couple of people in our vendor, outsourced vendor also, managed support, right? So between those, we are responsible for monitoring and addressing any issues that come up. That becomes a challenge because we have multiple shifts, somebody might, um, when the shift handover happens, somebody might drop one of the issues that is reported. So what I forgot to mention is the E-Series, it comes with the SANtricity OS, and then the SANtricity Manager, which is a desktop application, could be run on your laptop too, which we use for monitoring, right? Now, between the shifts, somebody might not be paying attention, or when they hand over, it might be overlooked, dropped, and that failure condition may not have been addressed. These are the storage arrays by themselves, they're very resilient, and they keep running once you power it on. As long as there's no power issue, it just keeps running. But with hardware, there might be disk failures, or especially on the client side, there might be a path failure, and it may just go unnoticed, and we will have to deal with some downtime. Okay, so another issue is, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we have a whole lot of arrays being deployed by our facilities and security team on the infrastructure side, right? So that even we may not be aware of it, but we are, at the end of the day, we are responsible for any issues that might come up. So how do you detect those or discover those storage arrays? Okay, so that was the two problems or challenges we had to deal with. Okay, so we were thinking of a solution, and finally we came up with using our product, which is Web Proxy, SANtricity Web Proxy Services. And why did we go with that product? Okay, so with SANtricity Services, it gives you RESTful interface, and you can pretty much use any programming language to integrate it with any of your monitoring, or either you write your own or integrate it with existing applications that you have. Right now, since I brought up REST API, I should probably spend a few minutes on what REST API is. API, I'm pretty sure in general terms, it stands for Application Programming Interface. But that's a very broad term. So here we're specifically talking about Web API, and with APIs, it's basically a contract provided between which sets the standards on how one piece of software interacts or talks to another. Okay, and it consists of a structured request and response. And it means give me this information in a certain format, and I'll give you this data as a function or in a particular format. Okay, so it's the REST API. REST API itself stands for Representational State Transfer, and it lets you treat server objects as resources. Okay, so basically that means you can create, update, destroy, or delete resource. Okay, in this case, it'll be all the components of a storage array. Okay, now with I think I have more detail in the next slide. Yeah, here. So with HTTP, you're all familiar with the get, put, post, delete, and these are the actions or methods. Get will let you just read, and put will you can update or replace. Post will create a new record. Delete is basically delete, right? And in addition to those, there are a few others methods which were don't really use, such as head options, patch, right? Anything else I'm missing there? I'm trying to see. Okay, this should take care of it. And so the data that's returned is usually in JSON or XML format, but as far as our SANtricity Web Proxy is concerned, it's all JSON. Okay. Any questions on REST API? So that was REST, right? But RESTful means anything that is conforming to the REST constraints. Okay.
Are you going to show some examples?
Sure. Yes. Yes. Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So now web proxy services. How do you install them? Install it. If you can have multiple instances of this. Well, something I forgot to mention. The state means it's each request is treated in isolation. Okay, so let's say I make a request to the service or any web service, right? The next request from me does not depend on my previous request, right? So imagine that not only my requests, I can have multiple requests going on from my end, but also other clients can be making multiple requests. So it's super scalable, right? Okay, so downloading the web proxy, you can download it from our website, from our support site. There's you can get binaries, exes, RPMs, so you can install it either on Linux or Windows. Okay, I have not tried the Docker image. We have installed it on Linux, and it's a very small footprint. Yesterday, for a little show and tell, I installed using the binary. I installed it on a VirtualBox on my Mac, and I'll show that to you in a few minutes. By default, it takes me only 5 minutes, and the install, right? And by default, it installs under OPT NetApp, SANtricity Web Services Proxy, and you can stop, just like any other Linux application, right? Okay, and so this is the API doc reference. And the cool thing about this is it's Swagger based or open API, right? Which this allows you to visualize and interact with the API resources without actually writing the code, any code, right? So, and it gives you all the documentation you need. I can show that to you in a second here. Oh. Bear with me, I went to sleep here. Okay, so there you go. This is the API interface or open API interface. You can see all the sections here, and you can pretty much open any one of these. Oh man, my mouse is acting.
Is this specific to only E-series, or also we can have the FAS also into this, or just
this is only for E-series.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's part of SANtricity?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So SANtricity Web Proxy Services, and the current version 3.0, it comes with the unified manager.
Right.
So REST API, this is a proxy service, right? So it lets you talk to all the legacy storage arrays, which did not support REST API. The newer ones, which is, when I say newer, 2800 and later, they have a embedded REST API service. So you can talk to, you can write REST API code and talk to the arrays directly. Okay, now with this, the web proxy, you can talk to the legacy server legacy arrays, because they were using a symbol legacy API service we had, and this guy will convert it for you. Okay, and so yeah, see this. Now if you were to run something for related to diagnostic, I can say, in fact, I have a script written just to figure out if there is any failure. And this is the API call I make. So it tells you what roles are required. I will talk about the roles in the next slide. And in this case, it requires a system ID, right? And so here, if you click on try it out, you can actually run the run a query directly from the web interface, right? So I don't have, of course, this is a test system, so I don't have any arrays discovered. But if you insert the system ID here and click on edit, execute, it will spit out the output for you. The virtual instance, you see the roles allowed. So it comes built in with, you cannot create additional roles, but it comes built in with storage admin, security admin, support admin, and monitor. Right? Storage admin gives you full read-write access to the storage objects of the arrays, but no access to the security configuration, which is the security configuration gives you the ability to manage the certificates and access to the SANtricity proxy server. And then there is, of course, the support admin, which is lets you access all the storage resources and any failure data or the MEL events, which is major error log events. Okay. And finally, monitor. The monitor is read-only access to all storage objects and nothing of higher privileges, right? I talked about the storage roles, which is the built-in set of rules it comes with. And then there's the access level, okay? For the sake of our automation, I don't really worry about any of the users. So at the bottom, you see there are two users, user IDs, RW and RO, as the names indicate. RW is for read write and read only. So this was what was available with the previous versions of SANtricity proxy service. And that's what I continue to use, right? Currently I have 3.0 installed. And with that, the only user enabled by default is admin, and everything else, which is storage, security, support, monitor, read, write, and read only, are all disabled until you set the password. Okay. Now these are the local users. In addition, you can create your own local users, or you can use directory services, right? So you can configure LDAP, Active Directory, and all you need to do is identify your groups or users, and then map it to the roles that we already talked about, which is storage admin, security admin, support admin, or just monitor. Okay. All right. So now, finally, we can talk about the examples, right? In our case, we have 4 of the 4 scripts that we have created using Python, because that's what I'm familiar with. Okay, and it's very easy to write REST API related scripts, as long as you're familiar with any programming language, right? So it doesn't have to be Python. There's a bunch of sample codes in that path at the bottom of the slide: OPT, NetApp, SANtricity Web Services Proxy, samples, REST API, and Python. Okay, and so then using that as a reference, you can build your own integration. So I do not have a software engineering background. I taught myself Python, and then I was able to create these scripts for a kind of a bunch of scripts, which is our application for monitoring and alerting our operations team. Okay, so remember I told you, so the first one is auto discovery and inventory update. Remember I told you we have this problem where people deploy a new array and we need a means of discovering them, right? So let's talk about it. So as I mentioned, it's based off of Python. And so anytime you power up storage array, within 24 hours, it will be auto discovered and added to the inventory, which is a database on the proxy server, right? And so basically we have a centralized E-series inventories. So if you had followed the traditional route, which is managing everything from SANtricity Manager, you would have to manually add the array to the SANtricity Manager. But here it will automatically discover it and it will add it to the inventory. Okay, so and part of the script, it records, it adds when a new array is discovered, it makes an entry in the system log where your script is running. And there are times, of course, every enterprise, there might be some test arrays that are being deployed and you don't really care about it. You don't want it reported in your inventory. So what we did was we wrote a simple config file, which we put an entry in there for any array that needs to be ignored. And when the script runs, it looks at the file, the config file, and then if there's an entry, it ignores that, skips that array. Okay, so we wrote the script and then we have it running. We add an entry into cron tab, and this is an output from the script, and it's discovered, I think, 2 arrays. Okay, and of course, these are not, if I've masked the IP, you can pretty much, when you write the script, you're free to put any detail, any level of detail that you want. Okay. All right, and so the auto discovery, sorry, I meant to show the screenshots are probably not, oh, I should actually be in slide mode, sorry. So this means, I'm not very sure if this is legible. I meant to show this on that virtual instance, but I dare not go back.
Yeah, no, I can read it. We can read it.
Okay,
We
cool.
can see
So
it.
thank you. So so this one has 2 operations, right? One is the actual discovery, but it does not go back and add it to the database. So then what I have to do is do a storage system query also, okay, right? So remember we talked about put, post, delete, right? So put is just, for post, it has, you need a, since it's discovery and adding the storage array, you have to make a post call, okay? And then the fields that are required for the discovery, it is the start IP for the subnet and start and stop, right? So in the config file that I mentioned, what I do is I have a CIDR entry, 10/something/24 or 22, whatever, right? And the script will parse the CIDR entry and creates the start and end IP and pass it to the API call. And once the discovery is complete, I check in my script if there's discovery process is running, because only one discovery process can run at a time. And once the discovery session is complete, I go back and make the second call, which is the storage, add the storage system. And for that, you definitely need the WWN, which is a 32 character alphanumeric number. And you can, the ID is optional, ID is a string, right? So just the controller address is required. Okay, And moving on to the next script, once we have, see, the second challenge I mentioned was fault conditions are ignored, right? Between shift handovers. So we have a script here, which is again based off of Python. So it goes through every single array in the inventory. And if there is a fault condition, it flags that and then creates a summary report of all the all the storage arrays with the fault conditions, and then sends out an email to the operations team. And it sends out, the logic is such that it sends out an email only if there is a failure, right? And again, since there may be some test systems which we don't care about, in the config file, you can put an entry. In this case, you can put an entry because of the logic in the code. All you have to do is put an entry for the name, IP, or WWN, and it'll skip sending out an alert for that user, for that array, sorry. Okay, and this is an actual report. So it's the discovery is the first script that I talked about. It's supposed to run at scheduled to run at 1 a.m. And this one runs at 7 a.m. every day in our case. And it sends out at 7 a.m. It sends out a report of all the storage arrays with failure conditions, right? So I masked out the host name and the IP address, but yeah. So once they get this alert, so you can extend this further if you choose, and have it using the language of your choice, right? And API calls for your ticketing service, ticketing application, and have it auto open a ticket if you prefer. But in our case, yeah, we haven't extended to that. Any questions? I'm hoping you'll find this useful. Yeah, customers will. Okay, and so what is the call, the API call for this? This is the one I was trying to show you earlier when my instance, the VirtualBox instance hung. This is a single API call. All you need is just do a get, and this requires read-only access, whereas the first script I talked to you about, because it's doing a post call, right? It requires read-write access. So it's a simple query, and then it gets you if there's a fault condition, yeah, you can generate an email or any further action that you require. Any questions on this?
Is there something on lab on demand to practice for this API?
I would not know about it, but let me check on that.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Sorry, what was your name?
Sukant. Sukant.
Shrikant?
Sukant.
Sukant, okay.
Yeah.
Let me make a note of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll pose a question to the group in general. So what you bring in here, Ram, is really a methodology that you have developed for us to manage, I'll say, at large E-series devices, which, we have all, the sort of tools out there, OCI and whatnot, that can look at them and see what's going on, but not really manage in the way that you're doing, right? You're doing all this discovery and all this, alerts and whatnot. And my question to the group is like, when you talk to your customers, especially those that have large deployments of E-series, I'm thinking like, all the oil and gas or big rendering farms or whatever, those places where E-series has a big play. How do they manage this large collection of arrays? Do anybody have any challenges from the customers as to how, manage? Again, it's because they're relatively small, right, and numerous. They can kind of get out of hand. Even simple things like drive failures can become, a daily chore to manage. And I think that's kind of one of what we're trying to get around with this type of scripting. So again, my question is: any feedback from the field on how these things being managed and like treated by our customers.
There's something on chat, maybe.
Yeah, so in chat, we got a reply from Andy saying that they rely on emails or SANtricity, which we do too
Yeah.
at some point, but the emails do get out of hand, right? So our operations team has keep in mind that E-Series, while it's actually a pretty big environment for us, it's there's a billion other things happening on the ONTAP side and other environments where operations is busy. So like when we send emails out, they get lost.
Yeah.
But SANtricity is not the best of the tool. If you compare to FAS, the kind of tool we use on that side, for particularly SANtricity, it's not that user friendly.
Right. It's more bare bones, and I think that's part of the product, right? The product is meant to be like no thrills, just go fast and give you reliable capacity, right? Which it's sort of their niche, right?
Is there anything in down the line planning to make it a little better?
Well, so we're not from the product team, but what I know I can share is that there's always a focus on leveraging stuff like this, right? The scripting around it. I believe there is I know there's some improvements on the latest generation of E2800, 5700 from a web page management perspective, right? They have a pretty GUI that you can log on to and manage stuff. But beyond that, we'll probably have to get the E-Series Pro team to comment on their roadmap.
Yeah. Yeah. So as Eduardo mentioned, we no longer, with the newer arrays, you no longer need the SANtricity Manager desktop application, but the web interface is very cool. But again, it's tied to that controller. You don't have like a central console managing.
Okay.
Right?
So if you've got multiple or clusters, then
that is difficult.
Then individually you have to manage every. Okay.
Right, and that's why we have this. That's why we had this type of solution.
So
right?
maybe you can convince the customer to use REST API and build their own. If they find useful these bunch of scripts useful, right? You can extend it further. Use these scripts maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
So number 3 is, now that we have all the storage arrays in our inventory, right? Occasionally you need a list of all the arrays, like, something's going end of life, or let's see how many of these certain models that we have, how many of those and all those, right? So we wrote a script to print out the entire inventory report, or if you want a detail for a given array, it can create that for you too, including the path mapping, because that's another concern we have. Since they're all direct attach and being mostly managed by the application team, we occasionally, especially when it comes to upgrading the arrays, you need to ensure that both paths are active, right? Otherwise, that could be an outage.
And also nowadays you can see E-Series on the Active IQ, but it doesn't give the upgrade path like you get for FAS and AFF or
Correct.
Other environment. We don't get that. So is that something? It's going to be something you are looking into?
We are NetApp IT, right? Not from.
Okay. Sorry.
Well, but that's a good question, though, right? We can certainly ask.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, we will. Yeah, we'll take it back to the product team. So as Customer-1, we interact with our product managers very often. So we have a close relationship. So we'll definitely take it back to them.
Yeah.
Right.
So you guys must be testing everything, any new product which is launched and come to the market. Before that, you should have getting hands-on, isn't it?
Yes, that is our strategy, our charter.
So we have a sort of a strange position where we are IT, right? We're trying to, as I said before, keep the lights running, right? Run the business, deploy the infrastructure we need to support the application teams. Mm-hmm. At the same time that we're doing that, we're also asked like, hey, we just got a new thing, deploy that too. right?
Yeah,
So we consume it early and we consume it often to try to solve our own problems, but also to try to provide feedback and experience.
yeah.
So Sukanta, so basically, NetApp IT is the first customer.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
The piggy banks.
That's right.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, we're like the extended QA team. So, okay, so the output of the inventory report, this is for the full report. I have the tail end of that report. Of course, I cannot list all the records, right? So as I mentioned in our initial slides, we have 180 arrays, and it breaks out the report by number of models, and gives a detail of the model, the version that's available and running on the array, right? And the number of disks, and followed by the management IPs and the WWN number. Okay, and then the SAMP of full array report, it spits out pretty much everything on that array, yeah, including the path details. If there's a fault report, it'll get you that also. Okay, I think, yeah, these are some things that customers may find useful. And finally, the inventory management, you know, where if you want to remove an array or test array or something that's been decommed, you need the ability to delete that entry, the array from the inventory. So that was a simple script with read-write access, and goes in and removes the entry for you. Okay, so any questions? And yeah, so key takeaways is that, as you saw from whatever I was able to show from the API interface, it provides you full management capabilities. And as we discussed, the API, because it's REST API, it's platform agnostic. You can write your scripts in any language of your choice, and you can build your own integrations, right? And definitely we are here to assist. If you need the code, we can look at that. Right now it's not posted on an external site, but we can look at that.
And we can download the API from the website, yeah?
Download, you mean SANtricity proxies, web proxy? Yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it can download it. I think I have a slide from that somewhere. Yeah. Somewhere. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right where you go from our now site, you can download our software, right? One of the options is for SANtricity Web Service.
Mm-hmm.
I can send you the link, but you'll know where it is anyway, I think.
Yeah. I'll find it. No problem. Thanks, Elias.
Cool. Any other questions?
As I said before in the previous presentations, where the intent here is to kind of share some of things that we're doing, some of our experiences and kind of best practices, and we're always open for more conversations. We can deep dive into specific topics, or if you have maybe things outside of the things we cover, we can also try to address them as some of the things we've seen. So we're here to really kind of to serve you guys as a resource and a reference.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.